Hello and welcome to a bit of a different video. Actually, not all that different from some of my other videos, but this is a little bit of a travel recap video, or I wouldn't say a vlog because I don't have that much video footage for it to be a vlog. But I'm just gonna kind of talk about what I did on vacation, and as of recording this voiceover right now, not quite sure what I'm going to do for the video. As far as video in the background, without the clips that I have from Germany. So, my trip actually happened quite a little while ago, if I could speak in better words. It was actually September 15th. Around 9 p.m. I left the US on my flight. The flight, as you can expect from a flight from New York City to Frankfurt Airport, was extremely long. I was unfortunately in the middle seat as I was traveling with my parents, and my dad is claustrophobic, so he has to have the aisle seat, and my mom picked the window seat, so I was stuck in the middle. And the person in front of me, like the second we got on the plane, leaned their seat all the way back, which is what it is. It's able to recline, so if you want to recline it, you should be able to recline it. But when they recline it, your leg room and the space in front of you shrinks quite substantially. So I was pretty cramped, and I just couldn't get comfortable the entire flight. Was never comfortable. There was also an issue that with me being awake pretty much the entire time, there was a lull around let's say 1 a.m. to like 3 to or well, actually it's probably close to like 1 a.m. to about 5 a.m. where they stewardess pretty much didn't walk down the aisles at all. So there was no drinks, nothing, and I was dying of thirst. But other than that kind of period of time, where I was really thirsty, uncomfortable, tired, but couldn't sleep, the flight wasn't too bad. That was really the worst part, was just being uncomfortable the entire time. Then we arrived at Frankfurt Airport sometime around, I don't know, 10, or was it like 9 or 10 a.m. German time. And we sat on the runway for like an hour waiting to be staged to go in. By the time we got to our rental car and everything, it was about 11. But as we left the baggage claim, we actually were greeted by pretty much the entire family, except for some of the younger kids didn't go with, but it was my dad's uncle and his cousin, or cousins, and one of their kids showed up and greeted us and kind of led us back to where we were staying. And we drove back to the place, the area we were staying. It was called Sandhofen, Mannheim. It's kind of two little areas there. Heavy military presence. There's a really big, there are quite a few U.S. Army bases there, and that's actually how my dad's uncle ended up staying there. He was deployed to that area, ended up marrying a local, and stayed there. Ended up staying there and never he kept his dual citizenship. And then, so we were staying in that area, and that first day since we got there, it was technically early Saturday. We had most of Saturday, but by the time you're on that long flight and everything, you're dead tired. You don't really want to do anything, but we ended up walking around the town and just looking around. They were showing us some of the local places and where they go to do certain things and just normal things. And that was about all we did that day before, I think 5 or 6 o'clock at night. I finally my body had enough, and from not sleeping practically at all on the plane, I passed out and took about an hour nap before waking up, eating dinner. Or no, I skipped dinner. I slept through dinner, but I woke up around 8 or 9 o'clock at night, stayed up for another hour or two, and then fell asleep again and slept like a baby and woke up at a normal time Sunday. Now Sunday, we decided that spend time with my dad's cousin and his kids, because he works all during the week. He tried taking off and spending more time with us, but he couldn't get off work. So we tried to kind of spend as much time as we could Saturday and Sunday with family. And Sunday, we kind of toured the area where my dad's cousin lived, which wasn't too far from, and you're going to have to excuse me for all pronunciations of German towns, cities, words, everything. I'm going to butcher it all. I apologize. But Bad Dürkheim, once again, sorry for butchering it, but it's actually a area where the world's largest wine fest is held. They have this massive wine barrel there. And first we kind of drove around that area, just went to a few scenic spots around. It's kind of on the outskirts of the town. There's more mountainous terrain, so you have kind of wooded areas, and we kind of drove through there. Lots of hiking trails I saw, which unfortunately I didn't get to hike any of them, but I saw tons of hikers and spots where you can pull over and hike. And interesting thing we noticed in those areas was in the woods there was no housing, there's a few resorts, spas kind of hidden away in the woods, but it's not like the US in the sense that most of that would be settled by spaced out houses. You would have larger spaces between houses, but there's pretty much no housing in there. And after we drove around there, we ended up driving down to the wine fest and went in, and I personally don't have a particular interest in drinking wine. I'm not huge into wine. I'll drink it. I don't mind it, but it's not my favorite thing. Two things that are really sweet alcohol-wise, my body does not like. I don't do very well with. I can't drink much before I don't feel very well. So I kind of stick away from wines, and the dry wines I'm not a huge fan of either. But we went to the fest, and the best way I can describe it is a large state fair. If you've go to a state fair, it's like a large state fair with everything like you normally expect. Some amusement rides, food everywhere, literally everywhere. Little shops and stands selling little things that you don't need to buy. And their only difference to like a normal state fair was there was tons of little kiosks selling wine, beer, liquor, and that's pretty much the only difference, is like they sell alcohol everywhere throughout there. And after we finished up walking around the fest, like I said, I didn't really have much interest in it. And most of us that went were not huge into crowds of people. As you know, I'm definitely not into a large crowd of people. I don't like being around that many people. So we didn't stay very long. We kind of walked around a little bit, got a feel for what it's like, and kind of took it in, and then left. And then after that, we went back to their house. We had some little bit of a snack, and then we walked from their house to a friend of theirs' place, which is seasonally open as a place that makes wine and fresh grape juice. They make new wine as well, and also food, and that was actually really good. The one interesting thing that I took out of it, and I pointed it out when we were there eating, is this place, they had the fresh the fresh grape juice, and something that kind of took me by surprise when they asked, like, what do you want to drink? I said grape juice. They're like, all right, red or white? I'm like, what do you mean red or white? It's grape juice. Oh. Like, it didn't process to click in my brain. I'm so used to like the generic grape juice that you get at like the large majority seems to be red grape juice. I can't think. I never really drank grape juice that much as a kid. I can't remember if there was a lot of marketing for white grape juice in stores, or if they even if they sell it. Not something I don't remember it that much, and that kind of took me by surprise, was the grape juice. And then what I had for food, so it's Flammkuchen. Once again, probably completely butchering how to say it, but essentially what it is a German pizza. Particularly, it's a regional thing. It's more southern Germany. If you look up where Sandhofen is, it's southwest Germany. And it's very interesting. It's so essentially very thin dough, and then they put on French sour cream, and then it's topped. The one I had in particular was topped with caramelized onions and bacon, and it was fantastic. Like, it was really good. My bowel system completely disagreed with all the onions, as most people do, but it tasted fantastic. Then after we ate there, went back home and able to go to sleep. Well, I say go to sleep, but I went back and tried to sleep all night and got practically no sleep because of what Monday was. Alright, so Monday. Monday was the most hectic of all the days, for me in particular. And that's excluding a mishap that I have later in the week, but I'll get to that. Monday, what I had planned out, which was what kept me up pretty much all night was I planned to drive from where I was staying in Western Germany, driving 2 hours inland, or well, not inland, but closer towards the center of Germany. And I was doing so to meet up with a friend, which I talked about this in other videos. I was going to meet up with Sebi. And for those of you who don't know, Sebi is someone we did racing with in Conelanders, and then outside of Conelanders, we talk a lot and try to do things, but the time zone difference makes it difficult. He was part of Team Beer and Whiskey, our Conelanders GT3 series league. That was something I was really excited for, to finally like get to meet and talk to in person with Sebi. And this is the first time I really met anyone from the internet and actually like saw them in person. I've never met anyone else from the internet that I know only from talking online, and never done that before. And while I was really excited, I was extremely nervous because I was in Germany and I have to drive 2 hours on the Autobahn to where he's staying. I've never driven a car in Germany. I vaguely know the rules of the road as they're pretty similar to ours, and I got kind of lessons from driving with family there, just picking up things. I didn't really ask for lessons. I just kind of paid attention and asked a few questions, like speed limit signs and stuff like that, because their speed limit sign system is very convoluted. You look at a speed limit sign and there's about 6 different types. Like, they have varying colors and symbols that cause them to have different meaning. There's like, they can be grayed out, they can have lines through them, they can have a ring around the outside, which indicates like red means that it's enforced. That is the enforced speed limit. And then you have the, of course, unlimited sign, which is just a circle with lines going through it. And it was just a very convoluted system that I noticed. Strange, but you kind of expect something like that in a place where they have and allow you to drive unlimited, so you have to have different variations because of that. So that caused a great deal of kind of stress, was not knowing all the rules of the road and not really experienced driving in Germany yet. So a little bit of nerves there. I'm a pretty good driver, despite what you'll hear later on, but we'll get to that. So I was relatively confident that I shouldn't have any problems. However, that's not going to stop me from thinking of all the problems I could have. On top of that, there was a language barrier of, if something does go wrong, now I got to deal with the language barrier of, I don't speak barely any German other than very, very basic words. And they're going to be mispronounced and butchered like hell because they're going to be Americanized and ruined from the 8 years since I had German when I first learned it. So I didn't go back and try to relearn anything just because I didn't think to dedicating that much time to it till it was too late to really learn. So all that kind of stress kept me up at night. But I kind of just figured after everything I'm a very intellectual person. I have a general understanding of what's going on, I can figure out how to get out of whatever situation I get myself into. I'll figure it out. uh, I I do my best work when I'm thinking on the fly. I react quickly. I'll just figure it out, and just kind of winging it worked out for me. I did plan out certain things because I also had to plan out after visiting Sebi and spending time with him. I had to drive to pick up NCW, another member of Conelanders that we raced with, and someone I didn't really know that well till after Conelanders ended, and we kind of broke up into different groups and did other things. I actually ended up talking a lot with NCW in some other discords, mainly it was Les Cube's Retro Night. Les Cube started organizing kind of retro racing, and that's when I started talking with NCW and getting to know him better. But that I'll go over that more when I spend time with NCW. So now we are at Monday. I leave to meet up with Sebi around noon. Actually, it was closer to 1 p.m., I think, because we were having problems with Verizon, who was having issues with our international plan. So I leave, going onto the Autobahn, and actually it was rather uneventful. Over the 2-hour-ish drive, I didn't really hit a whole lot of traffic. There was a decent amount of traffic due to a metric crap ton of construction zones, which led to me going very slow. It was off and on rain pretty much the entire way there. We had just kind of a drizzle, fog. I had a couple periods of heavy downpour, but nothing unbearable. It wasn't too bad. It was actually a nice relaxing drive. I really just kind of enjoyed sitting back, relaxing while driving. Just, you know what I mean? Like, you're not stressed out or anything, just relaxed driving. And the construction zones going slow allowed me to really kind of enjoy the countryside, because I drove through on the Autobahn sections that I went through. It was mostly countryside, not a whole lot in the way of architecture or anything. It was mostly fields and hills, and just nice scenic to me, because it's a little unfamiliar scenery. Not a whole lot of trees, I might add. Just kind of a lot of hills, rolling hills. That's the best way I can describe it. But after the drive, I get into where Sebi's staying, and he was currently at the university when I was visiting. So, because it was a Monday, he was working. I end up pulling up, and I get to the end of the road where we planned on meeting, and I'm like, you know what, I'll just park here on the end in case there's not much parking in the university, because I'm used to universities in the U.S., like Penn State, where I went to college. Trying to find parking on campus was damn near impossible. And if you did find it, you're going to get a ticket because you weren't allowed to park there. Unless it was in a parking garage, which you still need the pass for, and then you had to pay on top of the pass. So it was like, parking was ridiculous on campus where I went. So I was kind of expecting similar things at this place. However, as I started walking up the road, which turned out to be much longer than I was expecting, there was plenty of parking. Absolutely plenty of parking. Like, I could have pulled up about a foot, like, from where I ended up meeting Sebi, and parked there, because there was no cars and parking all along the road. So that wouldn't have been an issue. So that was kind of just an interesting thing I picked up on. But then as I'm walking, Sebi comes out, go through our kind of normal introductions, and he ends up leading me on campus. And in the campus, they have this courtyard. And the courtyard kind of leads out to a ledge, and the university is kind of up on a hill above the town where he lives. And from this courtyard, you get this beautiful vista of the town. You have vineyards on the hills behind the town. There's a river running through the River Mine, and up on the hill from up from the river, there's a fortress, and it was beautiful. Like it was kind of funny because a little bit at loss of words, because I'm finally like talking in person and face to face with Sebi, and just kind of at awe of that fact of talking with someone who I've just been talking with online and racing with and felt like I knew pretty well, but like it's just weird because I'm not used to that kind of experience of just meeting someone that way. So I was kind of at a loss of words then, just taking that in, and then see this beautiful vista, and I just can't think of anything of saying, just completely blank, just in awe of it. And end up going back to where Sebi had parked for his car. He ended up taking us down into the town, park right next to the river. We started off by walking through the town and going through and going through kind of the center, looking at all the shops. Ended up getting a pasty. I can't remember what exactly I got. I wasn't particularly hungry because to this point I was still kind of stressed out with the whole situation of what was going on. So, and when I get stressed out, I don't eat. I'm not hungry, just stressed. So I kind of forced myself to eat that because I knew I should eat something. But after we walked kind of around the town a bit, we went across the river and started walking up to the fortress. So walking up to the fortress was actually kind of nice. It was a bit of an incline, but nothing crazy. I, of course, was sweating like mad and out of breath by the time we got up to the first kind of overlook. But that's just because I'm completely out of shape. Haven't done anything really physical exercise of a really long time, other than just doing some pull-ups and push-ups. So I was a little bit winded, but walked up to the first vista by the castle, or I keep saying castle, fortress, and have a kind of another overlook of the town that you get from a different angle, which was nice. And then ended up walking up farther, walking into the fortress, which was kind of neat. It was cool to get the sense of scale. You always lose the sense of scale until you get right up on it, which is I always love on that kind of thing from architecture or just nature in general too, where you look at something from a distance, like this fortress from a distance, look relatively big, but then when you walk inside and you're standing in it, it feels absolutely massive. Like the sense of scale once you get inside completely changes, because when you're walking up to it, you don't walk at a particular spot that you get a good sense of scale until you're inside of it. And then once you're inside of it, it kind of takes you aback a bit, because just massive kind of structure size, enclosed, like you feel kind of enclosed, and it just feels like you're in a whole different place. And unfortunately, once we got in there, it seemed like most of the fortress was dedicated to a museum that would have had a lot of information about the fortress and certain aspects, but it seemed to be closed when we were there. So unfortunately, we just got to walk around a little bit, and as it always seems whenever you're visiting something and you're walking around, a good portion of it was closed off due to construction and renovations of trying to preserve it, which is a necessary evil. It's something you can't get around. They gotta do this kind of stuff to keep it, these structures maintained and preserve them, so that way future generations can go through and enjoy these things. So it stinks that it was under renovations when we went to visit, but like I said, it's one of those necessary evils. The big surprise, though, walking in there was in the middle of a fortress there was a smart roadster, which immediately made me think of Magnet, who another racer from the Conelanders League, who owns a smart roadster. So I thought that was rather funny. And kind of actually on that subject of cars, that was one of my favorite things of Germany. And I guess it's not particular to Germany. It could have been anywhere, but in Europe in general, the cars. That was fantastic. I was in heaven when it came to the cars, because there's so many small, weird cars that we just don't get in the U.S. You have these tiny Opels, all these crazy little cars. You got the Peugeots, the Renaults, Suzukis, like these little Suzukis we don't get. The Alphas, the 159s, oh man, God, I love the 159. If it wasn't for it being such a terrible car and the fact that I will know better and not want to spend my money on a 159 by the time I can import one, I would love to have one of those and enjoy the front wheel drive sadness. But look at it. But kind of back on topic. After we walked around the fortress for a little bit, we walked back down into the town and kind of did a more systematic walking through the town, trying to cover a little more ground. And because it was interesting, because Sebi, even though he's been there for quite a while, working at the university, said that he just didn't really get time to walk around and experience where he lives, because it's easy once you go somewhere to fall into that cycle of work, do things at home, work, do things at home, work, do things at home, and only go out for food and groceries and stuff like that, and you don't really get out and just kind of explore. So he got to kind of experience the area just as much as I did, which was kind of neat. Sure, we probably missed a lot or some things because he didn't know of everything there, but it didn't really matter to me. I still had a fantastic time just kind of aimlessly walking around and looking around. The only thing I kind of regret was I was kind of rushing around doing these things, because the entire time we're walking around and doing all this stuff, I can't quite escape that thought in the back of my head is I gotta keep an eye on the time and keep thinking about time so I don't leave too late and leave NCW stranded at the airport waiting for me. So that's constantly going on in the back of my head, and that's kind of probably making me rush a bit, and I kind of didn't get to slow down and enjoy things as much as I would have liked to. But what are you gonna do? It's just kind of the nature of the beast of how things worked out for me. So after we kind of walked around town a bit, we decided maybe we'll walk along the river and kind of tour the river a bit and just see what's there. And right as we were looking to do that, we noticed that the clouds were getting a little dark and getting ready to rain. So we made a quick change of plans, and we ended up actually going back to Sebi's apartment. And quite glad we ended up doing that, because shortly after we got to Sebi's apartment, it started downpouring. Like real heavy rain, probably the same rain I drove through to get there. But got to see the kind of command station and setup that Sebi has, and it reminded me a lot of college life. Of how sparse things can be and how you live the way kind of the life of someone who lives kind of revolves around university, because you spend so much of your time on campus that when you get home, you just need the basic necessities. You're not overly concerned about a whole lot of creature comforts of a home because you don't get to enjoy them. So that was the whole entire vibe I got of his place. But despite being rushed and everything, as we were thinking of things to do, and I suggested, how about we record a coffee break, which is a video series that Sebi does, kind of a almost like a Farlands or Bust, if you know Kurt J. Mac esque kind of deal. He plays Minecraft in a single player world. He doesn't do the whole walking to the Farlands bit, but what he does do is just kind of build things and talk about what he's doing at university or what's going on in his life, things of that nature. And I just said maybe we should record one of those with me as a guest, just as something to do, and thought it'd be neat if I'm in Germany visiting Sebi and I'm at his apartment and he has his recording set up. Why not do something? It just seems like a fun thing to do. Alright, so we set everything up. He brought up a chair, had some water, and we went through and recorded an episode. I can put links to it in the description. But once again, with that, we ended up kind of rushing through it because I wanted to, after we did that, go back to the university and see where he works, because he, for those of you who don't know Sebi or don't follow his channel, he does work with VR and trying to teach in VR, and I'll go over more of this when I get to that part where we go to that spot. But he wanted to show me his workstation and kind of show me what he does. And once again, that kind of worried thought of, I gotta make sure I get to the airport on time. We kind of rushed through the recording and kind of everything went by really quick, or at least in my head it felt like it was over in like 5 minutes when we recorded, I think, 15-minute video. But I kind of rushed, and looking back after later that night, I realized it shortly after I left, but I somehow mixed up times in my head, and I planned out the time that I left. I planned that out for a 2-hour drive, but the drive to the airport is an hour. Like, worst comes to worst, like with heavy traffic, it might have been an hour and a half, maybe. But I planned out 2 hours ahead, which was just way too much, so I rushed for no reason. And I kind of feel terrible about that, just because I wish I could have been a little more calm and kind of enjoyed things a little more. Not that I didn't have a good time, I had a fantastic time. It was absolutely awesome. However, I just felt it all felt so fast, and like I wish I had more time, essentially. And as I can talk about a little bit later, but I'll go over it a little bit now. As things worked out, while I was driving to pick NCW up, his plane ended up getting delayed, and I didn't end up picking him up till really late, so I could have stayed with Sebi for another like 4 or 5 hours. Or maybe not 4 or 5 hours. Let's see. I left around 7 p.m. Or a little, actually later than 7 p.m. So like 7:30. So I could have stayed another 3.5 hours and still made it with time to spare to pick up NCW. So wasted a lot of time. But after we recorded the episode, we went up to the university, and he brought me into his kind of the VR area where he works, and he showed me one of the programs he's working on, or the program he's working on to try to teach algebra. In particular, the program I tested and kind of played around with, it was about teaching about transforms. So think about if you have a point in a three-dimensional grid that is at, say, x equals 1, y equals 1, z equals 1. Alright, get to that point to a different point in space. And the kind of, it was a visual representation of that. So you actually saw a block at a position of space, and then you would kind of move it. And it was a way of visualizing a transform. And it was absolutely awesome to see that, because I watched Sebi's videos and I've talked to him, and I knew what he was doing. However, and always in the back of my head, I never could quite figure out how you do such a thing. Because when you're teaching math, I'm like, how would you aid in teaching math with VR? I never quite could visualize how that would help. And it wasn't until I had the VR on and I was actually doing it that it clicked. And it was just, as soon as I started experiencing it, I was like, okay, this all makes absolute sense to me now. Like, it was just like that kind of light bulb going off. It was like, this is amazing. Like, this is completely amazing. And then once that kind of clicked, then my brain just could not shut off on everything else you could do with this in learning. There's so many applications of learning with VR that would be absolutely fantastic. As soon as I started thinking about it, the first place my brain went is kind of my interest, which is chemistry. So boom, right into chemistry, and I'm thinking of how great for visualizing reactions. You can see the molecules and you can see reactions, and you'll be able to see how electrons attack certain bonds and break bonds. and you'd be able to see it in three-dimensional space, and it's just it would be amazing to just think about. And it's way more interactive than just looking at it obviously as at a piece of paper, and I think that would excite so much interest into actually wanting to learn about these things and visualize in organic chemistry. That's a huge thing in organic chemistry, is you need to visualize where electrons will attack a bond and break it, and where it will move and form a new bond. And you got to realize where these things are going to happen. And a lot of students, when they take organic chemistry, have so much trouble visualizing it. And I can say that with me personally, I had a huge issue always trying to figure out where the bonds would form, where they would break, why they would form, where they would form, why it would be more stable in one orientation than another in orientation. And I think that doing it in VR would be an excellent way of actually visualizing it, because you can kind of see these things happening, and it would bring a new kind of understanding to it, I think, in my eyes. And I could be wrong about it, but just that's where my brain went. It just and I could think of other things. Just, there's so many possibilities, and it makes things so much more interactive and fantastic. And it gave me a whole new insight into what Sebi's doing, and a whole new appreciation for everything he's doing. And that was fantastic. Like, that was one of the shortest things we did because of me being constantly rushing. But oh man, was that fantastic. Just, oh, and on top of that, that was my first VR experience. I never experienced VR, and oh, just it was almost too much to take in with everything. It was too good. It, like, I couldn't stop smiling. I couldn't stop, like, grinning, and just thinking about it on the drive when I had time, and I was just sitting there driving, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. And it was too cool, and it was fantastic, and it makes me look forward to see what he does and what other people do with that kind of technology. And especially as the technology advances and becomes more intricate and more capable, I very much look forward to kind of the expansion and what kind of things people do trying to teach in VR. I'm very interested in it, as you can tell probably by the excitement in my voice. But with that, kind of wrapped up our meeting and our time together, as I said, rushed to get out, or leaving too early, unfortunately, and we said our goodbyes, which was rather awkward, just because it was so difficult to say goodbye and try to just leave because there was so much more I wanted to do and so much more time. I just wanted to talk with Sebi, but life kind of goes on, and we had to part our ways. So it was a little bit of a disappointing leaving, but it had to be done as I was going to pick up NCW. So alright, and now on to the saga that was time with NCW. So I drove the hour to the airport. I would say maybe 20 minutes, not even 20 minutes out from the airport. I got a text message from NCW letting me know that the flight was delayed. and that it was going to be delayed 50 minutes. And that was unfortunate, and I tried finding a spot I could pull over on the side of the road and just relax, maybe listen to some music and take some time and just wait for time to pass before I went to the airport, because parking at the airport, obviously you have to pay for it, so I didn't want to spend too much time there. But by that time at night, as I was driving over there, the kind of rest areas, as we call them, in the US, were completely packed with tractor trailers. You could barely get in there, and I just didn't feel like fussing about with it, so I ended up driving to the airport, and I was like, you know what, I'll just pay whatever the parking is. And I pulled into the parking, sat in the parking garage, just watched some YouTube videos I had downloaded and saved on my phone, and just kind of relaxed. And after a while, I went in to the lobby, waited and waited and waited, and then right around probably 11:30 at night, maybe a little bit later, finally I hear a voice behind me. You had a 50-50 chance and you screwed it up. As NCW walked up behind me. I don't know if he got taken to a different terminal or if I just went to the wrong spot. Once I really didn't spend any time at the airport, other than we walked out from our terminal, got our bags, and left. I wasn't thinking about picking up NCW then, so I didn't really pay much attention, so I might have been waiting in the wrong spot, or they might have kind of brought him somewhere different than where they told me because of the delay, and they ended up busing him to the terminal, so there could have been some change because of that. But so he walks up, pretty much exchange hellos, and I immediately start walking towards the parking garage to try to get out of there before time rolls over and I have to pay for another hour of parking. We walk down to the machine, and by this time it's almost midnight, so I put the little card for parking to pay for my parking into the machine, and it reads error. Well, it took me a little bit till we switched it over to English and we knew exactly what it said, but I figured it said error based on what it was doing. Tried it on a few different machines, none of them worked. Realized that when I grabbed the ticket, I put it in my wallet, not thinking, closed the little flap that normally holds money down on it, and put it in my pocket. But the flap that holds the money holds it by a magnet. And those strips that they use for the card readers are set by magnets, so I may or may not have broke that. Actually, I definitely broke it. But so at that time of night, there was no kiosks open because it's almost midnight and no one wants to work at midnight at kiosks helping people with parking. You don't really need many employees for that. So I didn't know where the hell to go to pay for the parking. So I went up to one of the main desks, spoke with the guy behind the desk. He let me know that there would be an attendant at the gate right before you leave where you would insert your paid card. So I drive up, I go talk to him. Luckily, he spoke English pretty well, actually. He asked when for the license plate so we can get the time that I came in, I'm assuming, based on, I can't think of another reason why you need the license plate. I guess because the card didn't work, so he needs to know the vehicle. And he goes, all right, use this card. He hands me a new card, and I walk out to pay for it. I insert it into the machine, and up pops 1,639 euros. Just let that sink in for a second. Yeah, 1,639 euros. I know, like, looking back on it, and even like shortly after it happened, your initial, or like the logical response is, well, that's completely wrong. And that's of course the response I came to after a couple seconds. But that initial response is, when you see that number, your heart sinks. There's no way around it. Like, as soon as I saw it, my heart just completely sunk. I'm like, ah, shit. that's I have to use that kind of language because it's literally the only way I could say it. It's just, oh no. Just running through my head, what's this going to go through? So I walk back into the office and I go, there's something wrong. It came up 1,600 euros. And as soon as I said that, he goes, whoa. Like, he just go, like, almost took a step back and just shocked. And he's like, oh, I must have put in the wrong date. I was like, probably. So he looks it up again, and he goes, all right, this should be right. And he hands me a new card. It should be 15 euros. So I walk back out and I put in the card. It comes up 15 euros. I pay for it and I get out the gate. But by this time it's decent little, like maybe 20 minutes past midnight, maybe a little bit after that. So it was late. I'm starting to get real tired because I didn't sleep that night before, and but I was glad to be done with the hardest kind of part of driving through and getting to the airport and going through all the hoops and everything you got to go through at an airport, and having NCW in the car. So the hard part was over. Now the easy part was just driving the rest of the way back to where we were staying. And thinking back on it, the only thing I can think that guy did was, the car we were driving was a rental car, and I'm wondering if the system they use picks up the license plate and then timestamps it, so he could search up the license plate and it'll spit out a timestamp. And he might have looked up when it last went in for the rental car, so before we picked it up, and I'm assuming that's when that's the only thing I could think of why it went up to 1,600 euro. But drive back was relatively uneventful. I drove back really slow because I was tired. I shouldn't be driving fast, and once again, don't want to deal with any unnecessary attention of getting pulled over and dealing with the language barrier, so I just drove safe. And we got back around like 2 a.m. to my entire family, because apparently they were couldn't sleep with me out in the middle of Germany by myself. And a little bit awkward. It's like walking in with a friend I know from the internet and don't really have any real experience other than that, and trying to introduce him to my family. But once you get past the initial awkwardness, it was alright. So once we got back, after all that, we ended up going to sleep. I slept crummy again, didn't get much sleep. But the next morning, it was Tuesday. Tuesday, we pretty much didn't do a whole lot. We walked around. We spent some time in in Sandhofen. We went shopping a little bit, food shopping, and a couple other places nearby. Nothing crazy. We didn't do a whole lot. It was kind of a relaxing day. Not much really to talk about there, other than I got to spend time with NCW and kind of just talk with him and BS, and had a good time. So then we get on to Wednesday. Wednesday we decided we were going to go to the Heidelberg Castle, which is, feels like it's kind of a requirement. It's one of the more popular, obviously, castles in the area. We walked around the castle. We didn't really do any of the paid tours. They were expensive, and you could see most of it just walking around, which was nice. It was very scenic. I have lots of pictures and videos I can show as I'm talking about it. But we walked around the garden area, which was, as far as I can tell, a field. May have been a garden way back in the day, but it is currently just a field. There were some flowers, actually, like a single ring of flowers in like the very end of it. That was about all you can contribute to it being a garden. But that was really neat. Just that was neat in the aspect of the way things were built when that castle was built. The aqueducts were kind of neat. Just the architecture in general, I really enjoy. I love the architecture in Germany. Even like the mundane house, just like your typical house, your normal house in Germany is interesting architecturally to me, because it's just, you grow up your whole life in developed areas in the US where everything's cookie cutter, very, very similar, very bland, functional, no aesthetics to them at all. And then you go to areas like in Germany, like Heidelberg, where it's just really neat architecture, these small, interesting houses that were just built in completely irregular shapes that were completely impractical, made no sense as like a modern house. Like living in one would be terrible because it's not set up in a logical way for a modern house, but it still would be, it's still interesting to me. It's just, I love the architecture. But after we walked around Heidelberg, enjoyed that, we had a nice lunch there, looked at some shops, spent time, walked around a couple of the churches. We just walked around town a bit. And by the time we were leaving Heidelberg, I had a relatively wicked headache coming through. But we decided after that we were going to go to a large garden in a town not too far from Heidelberg. I cannot recall for the life of me what the name of it was. We didn't end up going in it because of rain, and we didn't feel like paying for going in there if it was going to rain. But before we got in there, we get back to a part of the story that I'd rather not talk about, but I figured it is interesting and I should talk about it. But when we were pulling up to find this place, we pulled into an area to park and pulled in. We get out, we realize it's a little bit farther away, but we're like, oh, we'll walk. We have about an hour where we parked, and we start the walk up. We find pay for parking, and we're like, you know what, we'll my family that lives there goes, you know what, let's pay to park because it's going to take more than an hour to walk around. And they said to me to go back to the car and drive up to the pay to parking and they'll just wait there. And I should have realized, just because of how bad I felt, I shouldn't have done that, but I said, whatever, I'll go and do it. So I walk back to the rental car and I'm rushing because I'm an idiot and I don't want them to be standing there too long waiting for me like it really matters. So I'm rushing. I get in the car. I go to back out. There's cars coming. And the rental car we had was a fully spec'd out Ford S-Max. It had all the bells and whistles, which I'm not used to because I'm used to old vehicles and just knowing where you're at. And it has parking sensors, which are going crazy because there's just, you have a fence in front of us, and then as I'm going to back up, there's cars going by, so the buzzer's going off with that. And I'm watching, there's a guy walking across who's parked next to me. So I'm watching him, I'm watching the cars going by behind me, and I see a last car going by, which is this black Volkswagen with the most violently pink wheels you've ever seen in your life. And as that's going behind me, hearing the parking sensors, I'm starting to roll backwards, and my brain is thinking that the parking sensors are going from the car behind me. So I start to turn out, and I had forgotten that when we pulled in, my dad pulled in really close to this tree, small tree that they had there. The parking sensor I was hearing was the front bumper sensor right next to that tree. And I didn't realize it because I thought it was the one behind me, and I'm looking behind me to watch the car. So I start pulling out backwards. I turn the wheel to start turning it and smash the front bumper and fender off the tree. So now I said a few colorful words because I was unhappy, pulled back in, got out, saw the damage. I had popped the bumper loose from its fittings and scraped up the side, and it wasn't a horrible amount of damage, but it wasn't a small amount of damage. So I was pissed off about that. And I don't crash cars often. That's only the second time I've done damage to a vehicle in the entire time I've been driving. The only times I do damage to a vehicle is because of me being a complete and utter idiot. The first time I did damage was when the first year I was driving my Jeep. I was driving in the snow to shovel off the local church I went to, and driving on a straight road. The speed limit's 45. I'm doing 45 because I have a Jeep. However, when I was on that straight road, I wasn't prepared to hit a snowdrift on the right side. And as soon as I hit that on the right side, it started to pull me to the right. And instinctually, because I wasn't ready, I wasn't thinking, I was just driving down a straight road, I hit the brakes. And as soon as I hit the brakes, I was screwed, and I ended up stuck in a ditch. So that was the first accident I have. Now, this is the second time I've ever done damage to a vehicle, was being stupid and not realizing the parking sensor was for the damn tree. So I'm still bitter about it. But that was, needless to say, I was unhappy with that. We ended up eating in like a kind of, what's a sports bar styled place. They had waffles and stuff. My family and NCW. I, however, was too bitter to eat anything and stressed out, so, not hungry. But that was pretty much the end of Wednesday, ending in sadness. However, and when we get back, me and NCW ended up BSing for pretty much quite a few hours Wednesday, and had a good time just talking life. It was nice. It was like talking with a friend that I've known my entire life. It was really nice. It was just like spending time with a good friend. So I really enjoyed that. All right, that takes us into Thursday. Thursday, we drove from where we were staying to the Nürburgring. For obvious reasons, it's a racetrack. Of course we want to go to a racetrack, and I'm in Germany. There's no way in hell I'm not going to see the ring. I really wanted to drive around the ring. However, when we got to the ring, we discovered that it was closed to the public. It took a little while for us to figure it out because there were quite a few cars going around, mostly manufacturer cars. There was a few BMWs in camo. There was some Jags, F-Paces there. There was a couple Land Rovers, Porsches. There's 2 McLarens, and as well as a Lamborghini Huracan, the performance version, the newer one they're working on, the high performance one, the SV, I think, or that might be the Murcielago SV, I don't remember, but it was the Hurricane version of that, and that thing sounded freaking glorious. Nothing like untapped V10. But we went to a bunch of different spots on the track, watched the cars going around, which by itself was awesome. Just experiencing that track in person was really neat, and the parts that I did get to see, you get a whole different respect for the elevation changes, the different bumps and things that are in the track that you feel in things like Assetto. Like, I feel all these spots in Assetto where the car gets loose and upset because of the bumps, but I don't see them. They just happen. And I when I did all my stuff at the ring, I never had force feedback, so I didn't feel where it was coming from. I just felt the car get unhappy. And I got to kind of see where that comes from. Certain, like, going into a set of turns, there's a dip, a real sharp dip that you would never be able to make out in a video game. But in real life, it's a very discernible dip that upsets the car, and you can see every single car that hits it, it gets upset, and then they go into the turns and they have to kind of fight with it. So that was really cool. The only thing about it was, oh man, did I want to spend more time there. I really want to drive around it, and it kind of motivated me to, in the future, I want to sort something out where I spend at least 3 days at the ring. I want to spend 3 days, at least one driving, and I want to see a racing event there. So I'm going to plan that out in the future. Probably not going to be for a few years, but in the future I'm going to do that. I have to. Going there and watching cars go around just left me wanting more. It just motivated me to want to do more. So I am going to go back to the ring. When that is, I don't know exactly, but I am going to do it because I need to. I need to spend more days there and experience it. But we ended up about Thursday afternoon. We found the diner. We ended up eating at the diner that's on the main straight, called the Devil's Diner. Very Americanized, or like American diner style place. Big burgers. We had these massive freaking burgers that I felt like I was gonna die after I ate it because I didn't realize how big it was. But good food, and you got to sit and watch the cars go by, and I grinned like an idiot every time the Lambo went by. So that was cool. And then again Thursday night, BS with NCW, just talking. I can kind of recap because Friday's actually the last day, but the time I had with NCW, he came in on that Monday night, technically Tuesday morning essentially, stayed with us till the end of Thursday, and he left with us essentially Friday. But I got to spend that time with NCW. That was great. Really enjoyed that, just talking with him, BSing with him, just felt like pretty much just two friends hanging out. And I don't think that could have gone any better. I wouldn't have changed anything other than maybe do something on Tuesday other than kind of sit around. But had a fantastic time. Really cool. And I don't know how I'd work it out, but I'd love to spend more time with NCW in the future. And with that, we come to Friday. Friday around like 4 a.m. We left for the airport. Got to the airport real early. Pretty much as soon as we got there, we parted ways with NCW because he had to quick catch a train because he was going to spend some more time in Germany and before he headed home. So he quick booked it as soon as we got there to catch his train. Me and my parents, we figured out, we dropped off the rental car, found terminals, got checked in and everything, and just sat around waiting for our plane. And overall, I had an absolutely fantastic time in Germany. I loved I loved everything about it. I don't have a single complaint about the time I had there other than hitting the tree, which is totally the Germany's fault, not mine. But I really can't, there's nothing I can complain about. It was fantastic. The food was good. The time spent with family was great. The time I spent with my friends, like meeting Sebi, meeting NCW, was fantastic. The architecture was great. The countryside, driving through the countryside was great. I enjoyed driving through Germany. I really enjoyed the Autobahn, getting passed by a Shelby GT500 convertible doing about 150 miles per hour was pretty fantastic. Having wagons pass you doing about 170 was interesting. Having a Ferrari 458 Italia pass you in a construction zone. Just things I'm not used to. It was fantastic. The only thing I wish I had was more time to see more things and do Oktoberfest, because I was there for Oktoberfest, but I just trying to get to Mannheim where they do like or not Mannheim, what am I thinking? Munich, and trying to get there and have a good time was just not in the cards for what we had. Like, we could have maybe done it Tuesday, but we really didn't have time to do it. So it was unfortunate, but I didn't suffer too much from not doing it. I can always do it in the future because I want to go back to Germany and spend more time there. So maybe in the future I'll do an Oktoberfest kind of adventure and plan out a day or two of Oktoberfest. But I think with that, that concludes my trip to Germany. The main things I can say is I really want to thank Sebi for showing me around the university and all the things he did. We did together. That was fantastic. I wish we had more time, but I really, really enjoyed the time we did have. And thanks to NCW for agreeing to fly in from London. Have someone as crazy as me pick him up from the airport, drive him, and have him stay with my family in their house, in this tiny house, and sleeping on a little cot on the floor. And I slept on the couch and kind of just spending time with my uber conservative American family and my uber conservative German family, and just dealing with the shenanigans that is that. I hope he had as good of a time as I did. And I hope to see more Germany in the future and more of Europe, because there's so much I need to see. So I'd like to thank you for watching, mostly listening to whatever this was. And I will hopefully see you in some other adventure. Like, as I talk, I'm going to be doing another adventure in the FC. Hopefully that goes well. So, have a nice one.